This is the first of a couple of different videos that we'll use for notes for Unit 1. This is kind of an overview about this first unit and some of the stuff at the beginning. It's kind of a review of things that you had in chemistry. So since you've already had chemistry, I'm assuming that you know things about covalent and ionic bonds, polar covalent bonds, van der Waals forces, hydrogen bonds, things like that. If you think you need a refresher on some of that, let me know. But I'm assuming that you have that knowledge coming in, so we're going to skip right over that part and go on and talk about specific things about water and elements that are necessary to understand about biology. So first of all, we're going to have a quick review of water properties as they apply to biology. Okay, remember that water is essential to life on Earth. Earth life as we know it. Could there be life somewhere else in the universe that doesn't require water? We don't know. We assume, because of our personal experience with what we have on Earth, that life will require water, which is why we look for water when we go to places like Mars and the Moon and places like that. We're looking for evidence of water to see whether there might possibly be or have been some life there. So we don't really know for sure. The big thing is to remember that all organisms have a lot of water in them, and that water is necessary within cells for chemical reactions to take place, things like that. Just a quick review about water. Water molecules are polar. They have a slightly negatively charged oxygen end and a slightly positively charged hydrogen end. And this gives water the ability to easily hydrogen bond with water molecules with each other and with other substances as well. And that's what produces a lot of the properties that help make life possible on Earth. And so we need to understand some things about water. And again, I know you know this from chemistry. This is just a quick review about things as they apply to biological concepts. Okay. So there are 4 emergent properties of water. If you remember what emergent properties are, these are properties that that emerge as a result of specific arrangements of things and interactions between component parts. Think back to previous biology classes. You might have learned about emergent properties as they apply to something like a box of bicycle parts. If you have a box of bicycle parts, it's just a box of parts until you put it together. But once you put it together, the property that emerges is that it becomes a mode of transportation so that you can move around. And so that's the thing to remember about emergent properties. And so there are 4 major properties that water has that are necessary for life on Earth. First of all, its cohesive behavior is important for lots of different things. Its ability to moderate temperature keeps our Earth at temperatures that in most places humans can survive, animals and plants can survive. Okay. It expands upon freezing, which is important for lots of different things. The example that's shown here in the picture is weathering of rock. Okay, that is an important component. And finally, its versatility as a solvent. We call it the universal solvent for good reason. It's used for lots of different things. So let's talk about those in turn. Cohesion and adhesion are important. These make it possible for plants, for instance, to move water and nutrients from the roots up to the tip top of the tree. Okay, and cohesion and adhesion are properties that exist, again, because of water's polarity. Since water molecules can easily hydrogen bond with each other, they stay close together. That's cohesion. Remember, cohesion is attraction of like substances for each other. But in addition, the water can also hydrogen bond with other substances. That's called adhesion. That's when you have unlike substances that are attracted to each other. And both of those things together are what allow the water to move up the tree from the roots all the way to the tip. Okay? And so that's really important for understanding. It allows them to overcome the effects of gravity, for instance, to get the water up to the top. Okay? Without a pump like we have in our bodies. Okay? Surface tension is also related to cohesion. This is a measure of how hard it is to break the surface of a liquid. And if you think about, for instance, drops of water on your car, like you see over here, drops of water as they form on plants and things like that. Those are examples of surface tension in inner water droplets. That's important for a lot of reasons, but one thing that's really beneficial to us in terms of living things is the fact that you can have some living things that actually can walk on water as a result of that. And so this is also how, for instance, because of surface tension, it also, involving water molecules as well, it also explains how that gecko can climb around, walk around on the ceiling of your house when it gets inside. So surface tension is an important thing related to the cohesion. Second property is moderation of temperature. You already know this. You learned in middle school about the sea breeze, land breeze effect, okay? The big thing is that you know that water takes longer to heat up than land does, and it takes longer to cool down than land does, okay? And that's important for that sea breeze, land breeze phenomenon that you learned about. But the big thing is that it absorbs heat from warmer air and releases heat to cooler air. It allows us to maintain temperature within limits that permit life to occur, okay? The high specific heat of water is related to the hydrogen bonding. That's what allows it to absorb as much heat as it does, and so forth. And so those things are really important to our ability to live on Earth. Another property is the fact that ice floats. When it freezes, it floats on liquid water because the hydrogen bonds become more orderly, basically. You've probably thought at one point in your life that that ice floated because there was air trapped inside of it. You may have misunderstood. It's not really air trapped inside. There's space in between those molecules, not air. And so the space makes it less dense. Water reaches its greatest density at 4 degrees Celsius, and then it starts to lose density again. The big thing to realize about the fact that ice floats is that if ice sank to the bottom, then all bodies of water would eventually freeze solid. And if that were the case, then life would be impossible. And so you've got to have an ice floating in order to maintain living things in water underneath the ice, and also to allow us to help our temperature remain moderated as well. And the last property about water that we'll talk about is about the fact that it's the solvent of life. It is the universal solvent for good reason, because it can dissolve so many things. It's polar. It can easily form hydrogen bonds with lots of different things. It can dissolve ionic things and form hydration cells, like you see over here in the sodium chloride when you dissolve the salt in the water, okay? It also can dissolve ionic and non-ionic polar substances. Anything that's polar, as long as it's hydrophilic, can dissolve in water. Hydrophobic things, of course, can't, okay? Big thing to remember about this, the reason this is important is because most chemical reactions in organisms occur in water solutions within cells, okay? They involve solutes dissolved in water. Another thing that's important for us to understand about water is the fact that this is related to the acid-base balance, okay? This is super important for living things because you have to maintain an internal pH of around 7, okay? If you have products of chemical reactions that have a tendency to release hydrogen ions, it's going to lower the pH and make the solution more acidic. If it absorbs hydrogen ions or gives off hydroxide ions, that's going to make the pH go up, make it more basic, and that could be deadly for cells. And so there are chemicals found in cells called buffers, okay, that help minimize changes in concentrations of hydrogen ions and hydroxide ions in the solution. Most of them are something like this one you see here with carbonic acid. They either contain a weak acid and its corresponding base, or they're able to hydrogen ion donor in high pHs and a hydrogen ion acceptor in low pHs, okay? And that helps prevent sharp, sudden changes. So if you see here, you've got 3 different solutions, water and 2 different kinds of buffers, and it shows the pH range over this volume of sodium hydroxide that is added. But if you have buffers, that helps keep the pH close to that neutral point, okay? In this case, it's just talking about a water solution, okay, which has a different pH than the blood, but you can see that in your cells it would do the same kind of thing. The last part about this is talking about the elements in life. And of course, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about this right now. You already know a lot about elements because of your past history in chemistry. But the big thing to remember is that living things require certain kinds of elements. Energy flows through an ecosystem like we see here, okay? But the matter, the elements, are recycled within the ecosystem, okay? You've got the energy comes in as from light, it goes out as heat. There's chemical energy stored in food. but the matter has to be recycled with energy. We don't make any new matter. We don't get any new matter from an external source like we do with energy. Okay, we have to be able to exchange matter with the environment in order to do all of our biochemical processes and all of our metabolic processes. Okay, we have to have those molecules necessary to build new molecules. Where do we get them from? Well, there's these biogeochemical cycles are really important to replacing some of those things and recycling some of those things, like nitrogen and carbon and water, of course, and phosphorus. And there's several different things that are involved there. You learned a little bit about those in Biology 1 or in pre-AP biology. But the big thing is to remember that we have to have certain elements present, and the ones we normally think of as necessary for life, and there are more than this, but the main ones are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. Those are the main ones that we're going to use for our biomolecules. So carbon is the main structure. It is the backbone of our organic molecules, our biological molecules that we'll learn more about in the next part. Okay, we have carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, nucleic acids. Carbon is used for lots of different things. It can store a lot of energy. It's used to make cells. It's used in all these different compounds. Nitrogen is necessary for proteins and and nucleic acids. Phosphorus is needed for nucleic acids and phospholipids and things like that. So there are a lot of things involved in this, and we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the elements, but do understand that it is important to have that basic chemistry knowledge. And again, if you need some help with something, let me know, okay? We're going to talk more specifically in subsequent videos about the various groups of biomolecules, the carbohydrates and lipids and proteins and so forth. But that's all we're going to talk about in this particular one. See you next time.